When you hear the phrase soft as steel, what do you think of? While the word steel might conjure up images such as massive high rise buildings, where does the soft part come in? And what exactly does this mean in our work and in our lives? Welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Duran, featuring engaging conversations with a wide range of industry leaders around soft skills, how we practice love, inclusion, social justice, and compassionate leadership that's everlasting in the workplace. And now, here's Dennis Duran.
I'm honored to have as my guest a vitally important labor leader in Canada, Sean Strickland. Sean is the director of Canada's Building Trades Union, CBTU, an association of 14 construction trades unions representing 600,000 unionized skilled tradesmen and women across Canada. CBTU is the Canadian office of the North American Building Trades Unions. He joined the CBTU at a particularly challenging time during the raging COVID-19 pandemic in July 2020. In announcing Sean's arrival at the CBTU, the president of the North American Building Trades Unions, Sean McGarvey, described Sean as a respected senior construction executive with the strong leadership experience and understanding of the building trades needed to carry on the important work we do and to effectively represent Canada's skilled trades workers. Sean, welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast.
Great. Thank you very much. Fantastic to be here, Dennis. Nice to hear your voice.
Thank you very much. It'll be recorded so you can listen to it as much as you want.
Yeah.
So I think I found a way that I'd like to try to focus our conversation to start. As you know from hearing the intro at the session that you sat in at FIF a few weeks ago and some of the things that I said, I'm the soft skills guy. I talk about the people part of our business and our industry, and I do it with a fair amount of energy and fervor, knowing from my experience, and I think you may share this, that the qualities of people are the things that make a difference between those people who are successful and those people who are not. At least that's one way to look at it. So I found it interesting that in talking about the mission of CBTU, there's a mention of 4 pillars. Those 4 pillars in order as they were presented are government relations, workforce development, capital strategies, and communications. I want to focus and build and kind of expand on 2 of them. The first being workforce development, and the second, communications. In listening to a couple of things you said off mic, it's clear to me that you understand and you embrace the notion that our industry is vastly different now than it was 20 and 25 years ago, and that the pace of change, if anything, is broadening and accelerating in many ways. So when we think about workforce development and connecting that to my interest in promoting the notion of what I call soft skills, and in particular, I focus a lot of conversation around several ideas. One is about the notion of what inclusion means to our society. The second is what social justice means to our society. And the third is what love means to our society. And I say that with a smile because I think it's vitally important. And I found it interesting to hear some senior leaders talk about love in our session a few weeks ago. And we're going to talk about it a bit even in our conversation today. I only have 30 minutes of your time, so I just want to kind of set it up and say that, again, in taking a look at the accomplishments of CBTU and the building trades in Canada in so many different ways, I see great results and great progress in things dealing with diversity, with equity, generating opportunities across the board in a range of demographic areas. And I also see what seems to be a very good job of trying to communicate with those that you serve. Again, I think one of the faults that I would lay at the feet of labor and labor leadership is that we have not served ourselves well as labor leaders in telling the story of the opportunity in the trades and doing it in a way that recognizes it's not just that we will teach you how to use the tools and the proper methods and how to be safe, but we will develop you as a whole person. I think we're missing the whole person part in some places, although again, I see in the way the communication is handled through your website principally that you may be ahead of the curve with regards to that part of it. So let's start with this notion of telling the story. What is the story that we need to be telling to help individuals understand that in our industry, in construction, there are many opportunities for individuals to join this industry and to be able to make a fair living, raise a family, and contribute to society? What's the story?
Well, thanks for that, Dennis, and you hit on some very key themes there, and thanks so much for reiterating our strategic plan, which really is the guideposts for all the activities at Canada's building trades unions, and the strategic plan has been broadly bought into by our Canadian Executive Board and our affiliates across Canada. And when I speak, and I speak a fair bit, like most labor leaders do, across North America, and I talk about our strategic focus and government advocacy, and I talk about workforce development, and I talk about work opportunities, but I also talk about communications. And I am really emphasizing with all of our trade unions across the country in construction that you need to have a robust communications plan. You need to have that robust communications plan for a variety of reasons. And I'm not just talking about, a Facebook page where folks can go on and vent, but a sophisticated communication strategy to do just that. What you said is to tell our story. And the story of the construction industry is one that needs more retelling, is one that needs to be shouted from the rooftops, and is one that, quite frankly, we haven't done a very good job on it. Like I was at a seminar last year put on by a consulting company, and they were all concerned about all these industry leaders. They're all concerned about the skilled trades adjusting to the new energy sources of the future. Like small modular reactors and hydrogen and carbon sequestration, and how we're going to train all these people to do this. And I say, look, training, like our people, we built the pyramids of Egypt. You look at our modern day societies and the aqueducts of Rome. Our people with engineers, they brought us running water. They sanitized our cities. They built spaceships that, take us to the moon. Like skilled trades have been around for a long time, and we build your hospitals and your schools and your public transit gateways and you name it. Skilled trades people do all this work. Mm-hmm. And I always remember when I was growing up, my dad was a bricklayer, and I started on construction when I was 15. But I always remembered, my old man driving by these buildings and pointing this building and say, I worked on that project. Mm-hmm. I worked on that project. And so I think, tradespeople who work in our industry have a tremendous amount of pride in what they do, have a tremendous amount of pride in the skills they deliver with their hands. But we need to tell society that, hey, look, society, modern day society, would not be what it is without skilled construction workers, would not be what it is without skilled tradespeople. And that's a story we need to tell. We need to tell more and more. We need to link that to the opportunities that apprenticeship can bring in the construction industry. And it's not like it's finite, Folks talk about you do your apprenticeship, then you get to be a tradesperson, and, you get your CFQ or you get your compulsory license or whatever it is, and there you go, you're a tradesperson. Well, wait a second. Most of our small and medium contractors are owned by tradespeople. They started off as a tradesperson. Now they own you're at the Finishing Institute there a couple of weeks ago. They own their glazing company. They own the painting company. So there's a real pathway in the construction industry that just starts with apprenticeship. Apprenticeship, journey person status, foreman, site super, you get into project estimating, you can get into safety, you can get into ownership. There's a whole pathway of career opportunities that are available for people to get into the construction industry to help build our modern society. And that's a message that we need to tell more and more frequently.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say it any better. And I wouldn't even try. And I'm really glad that you started by talking about communication, because when I take that down to the individual level, I say a couple of things when I visit with folks. One is that, I'm talking to you about this notion of soft skills, and I'm not just talking about it because I like talking about it. I'm not just talking about it because it's different. I'm talking about it because at the end of the day, in order for us to be successful as providers of service in the form of contractors, whether they're painters, glazers, it doesn't really matter what the trades are, we have to make sure that we remember that we're dealing with people. And if we forget that for a minute, then the people that we're dealing with are going to know that we care less about them and more about our bottom line. Because everything that we talk about, everything you've said to this point, telling the story, all contributes to the ability for businesses to come into being, for businesses to grow and prosper. So it is in a very simple and direct way. This does relate to the bottom line of business enterprises. It's good business, just as it was. I'm curious where you think there was a big pivot on safety, but I'd say here in the States, it probably goes back 20 years where there was a pretty strong pivot to safety becoming synonymous with quality, synonymous with a base expectation, and it was important because we knew that good safety was good business. But before 20 years ago, and particularly in heavy industrial and pipeline settings, safety was interesting, and that was about the end of it.
That's interesting. A couple of things. Like the safest companies are typically the most profitable companies. So if you dedicate the time and resources and practices to good safety for your people, they're going to go to work for you. They're going to be more productive. Your job site's going to be more productive. And as a contractor, you're way much better organized than someone who doesn't give a darn about safety. And so the two are inextricably linked. There's a tremendous amount of surveys that are out there demonstrating this. And I think to a large part, particularly in the unionized industry, our contractors get this. On the communication side, you talked about, how that leads to good business and good business practice. And I was just talking about communication from kind of an external industry kind of focus. But we can't forget for a moment that construction is a people business. And it is and remains a people business. And sure, we have, we don't have so many blueprints anymore, and we have our projects that are linked through, iPads and computer programs. The drawings get loaded up onto dashboards in the shack and those kinds of things. But execution of your project still is up to people, and those people work with other trades. And so on bigger projects, there's more integration, there's more communication that needs to happen between the trades, and also to your employee or your union member. I remember when I joined, I'll just tell you a quick story. I said, I worked on my first site when I was 15. It's like I'm a fall birthday, so I was almost 16. And my God, the folks on that job treated me like I was just, not much more valuable than that pile of cement in the corner. Like, it was tough. Like, ignored me, wouldn't have lunch with me, like I was just the lowest of the low. And so we've come a long way since then. And, it took someone, and I'm talking going back, like this is in the 70s. And so it took people back then, if you wanted to get into construction, you needed to be tough. You need to have a thick skin, and you needed to take a lot of crap that young people won't take today. And so funny, I got my son on a job about 5 years ago, and I was like, oh, here we go. This is going to be the making of him. He's going to go on this job site, and they're going to really show him the ropes, And he comes back from his first day, and it doesn't look like he's got an ounce of sweat on him, and he's not dirty. And I said, well, what happened? Did you go to work? And he says, oh, Dad, you wouldn't believe it. They were so nice to me. They were so polite. They drove me around in the truck, and they showed me everywhere we're going. It was on a transit project, And and he said, Dad, I didn't know what the hell you were talking about. Everyone was just great. And I said, that is really good to hear, son. That is really good to hear, because the old tough construction guy and me wanted him to be, experience what it was like, which
Right.
really is the wrong way to do things, because that just drives people away from the industry. So you have to treat people with respect. You have to treat young people with respect. You have to, you have to meet them to a certain extent. Have to meet them to where they are and where that worker is. You got to get the job done, so you got to have some tough conversations along the way. But you can't treat people like garbage and expect to get good results. And for a long time, that's how our industry worked.
Yeah. Wow. You should do what I do. I think you should. When you retire from that job, you can come do what I do, because this is exactly what I talk about. And my son's story is the quick version is this. He went off to a Division III college to play lacrosse.
All right.
And after his first season, he didn't make the team in the second season, and he said, "I just want to come home." And I said, "It's fine. You can just continue your college work here at home." And so he came back, and he said, like in maybe April, he said, "Dad, I think I want to see if I can get a job in doing something in construction for the summer, so I can see what it's all about." So I was able to help him. I know a few people. According to Tim Strickland, everybody knows me. But I hope he hears this, and he better laugh when he hears my mentioning him twice in one little podcast. I think very highly of him. So after the second day, I got him. I said, "Dad," I said, "Christopher, how's it going with the job?" He said, "It's fine. It's great." He wasn't as happy as your son was, because he didn't get driven around in a truck. So what have you been doing these first 2 days? He said, "Sweeping out stairwells." And I said, "Well, I guess that's what you'll be doing." He said, "Well, Dad," and forgive listeners to the podcast, says, "Dad, well, they say that I'm the superintendent's bitch." So there's a little of a bridge back to the old days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But he took it the right way. And at the end of the summer, he decided he wanted to go into the construction industry. And now he's been in the industry for 6 years. He's a project manager for a general contractor, working on big projects on the East Coast.
Great.
And and I tell you, though, it's interesting talking to him about work. He's got an old soul, meaning, he's read my book. He knows I wrote it. He read it. And he listens to my podcast at least some of the time. But as I listen to him talk to how he deals with people in mine or our generation, he's pretty tough. He treats them the way they want to be treated, which is us old guys. We don't mind the boot up the ass. We don't necessarily like it, but that's the way it was.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. But coming back to your thought about people today, we're in a multi-generational workforce. And the tug and pull between those of us who are leaving and those who are coming in, with more on net in some trades, probably more leaving than coming in, or if it's even close, it's still not good enough. And I remind people when I talk to, I had a room full of business agents and organizers, and I remind them that one of the reasons we need to change our story. And tell the story of being a member of a union and going into the trades is pretty fundamental, and that is, they make contributions to the retirement of the folks that are retiring. We need that in order to continue the whole proposition of unionized construction, which is we teach you, we provide you a career path, we provide you a decent living and benefits and retirement. So why not? But that story doesn't necessarily win the day if told that way to the newest generations in the workforce. They want to hear more about, and my phrase, and I'd like you to comment if it makes sense, the idea of developing the whole person, not just a trades person, but a person who learns how to be with other people, how to relate to them, and most importantly, to grow and succeed. You said it correctly, absolutely correct. We're in a people business, and to be successful in the people business, you have to be successful in building relationships.
Yeah, 100%, and multiple relationships on multiple levels, and we have to adjust. And like I said earlier, we're getting better at it. We need to attract more people into the industry. We need to attract women into the industry. We need to attract, new Americans and new Canadians into the industry, more people of color. Black, Indigenous people of color. In Canada, we have big efforts to get more Indigenous people into our industry, and like in the U.S., more women. And so that, that's a cultural change for a lot of the industry. And so, you can't solve some of these labor demand challenges of our industry in terms of, how we're going to get more people, we're going to bring more people in, without changing some of these practices and changing our culture to recognize that. And we have to, to a certain extent, recognizing, the different generation in this 2023, you kind of meet people a little bit of where they're at. Whereas, when I was coming up, no one cared about where I was at. Like, you showed up at 8 in the morning or 7 in the morning, you worked the end of the day, and you work like a dog, and you were treated like a dog. Mm-hmm. And our industry can't survive if we, revert to that. And so I think we are, and I think we're doing through our unions, we're doing, equity and diversity training, we're doing mentorship training, we're finding ways in which skilled trades people can mentor the next generation. We have apprenticeship supports. Here in Canada, we have a program underway right now where we have incentives for contractors to hire a first-year apprentice. And once that first-year apprentice gets on board, they get apprenticeship support from the hall. But we also have a third-party group providing apprenticeship support to that new apprentice, answering some questions they may not feel comfortable with about asking on the job site, and financial management tools, diversity training, equity training, preparation to challenge the exam. So there's a whole host of soft skills and external supports that are available in the unionized industry. And that's why we have, a higher completion rate than non-union and a higher retention rate than non-union, because we have this host of programs that are available that I would qualify and characterize as soft skills. Mm-hmm. So, we're providing people those kinds of supports and recognizing that, yes, you're a person now. You're a union member. You're a member of IUPAT, or you're a member of whatever union, but you're a person. And mm-hmm. people want to be recognized as that. They want organizations, all organizations, society, even outside of construction, to recognize them as employees as like people first. And so mm-hmm. that's a dynamic that I think, our generation's wrestling with a little bit. You got to put boundaries to that. You got to, because you still need to get the job done at the end of the day, but you got to treat people more than a number, and that's more important today than it ever has been.
Yeah. So as far as, and I'll put you on the spot just a little bit, if you were to give a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being highly effective, how well do you think the senior leadership in the industry has embraced the need for all the things that we're talking about, and the change in dealing with a multi-generational workforce and multicultural, multiracial, all the things that are part of diversity? How good a job are we doing as senior leadership in the industry?
Well, I would say senior leadership, 9 out of 10. But as you go down the leadership chain of command and onto the job site, we got a hell of a lot more work to do. Yeah. That's the bottom line. We have an office to advance women apprentices and on a bunch of levels. We hear back from some of the women what they're experiencing on the job site, and it's terrible. Mm-hmm. There's been examples of racism on job sites and so on, and that's, and I don't know if these kinds of instances are higher in construction compared to other industries that are, evolving and being more accommodating to different groups and to women and so on. But we have a ways to go there, and the good news is that it's getting better. It's not perfect. We have a ways to go. And I also think that as an industry, we have to recognize the particular demands that are on a woman tradesperson compared to a male tradesperson. And I sat in on a call with some women apprentices in the East Coast, and they're talking about childcare, for example, and how I'll give you one example. This woman struggled to get childcare, and then she was it was like an 8 to 5 job, was perfect, close to her house, right? So she's on 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, perfect. So then she shows up on Monday, and then the foreman says, "Oh, we talked to fellas, and we're gonna go to 4 10s now instead of 5 8s." And she goes like, "Oh my God, why don't you do a childcare now? Because now I'm working 10 hours a day. I'm going 8 to 6 rather than 8 to 4. Childcare is done at 5." And so, if thankfully in that situation, the contractor recognized and made some special considerations. So these are some of the things that we have to, we have to adjust culturally to be more accepting, and we need training, and we need to do that so it hits the job site. It's improving there, more work to be done. But we also need to recognize some of the structural barriers that are in place to support women in the trades and to support multiracial groups in the trades as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think from my perspective, what I see and hear includes this phrase often. That's just the way it needs to be. Mm-hmm. Or that's the way we've always done it.
Right.
Those two kind of two hanging on thoughts that could suggest that I will not see a different way to do this. I will not see that we can be more flexible in scheduling and crew configurations in consideration of this factor or that factor. And again, it speaks to what you said earlier, and I think I appreciated your response to the rating question. This senior leadership is certainly increasingly comprehending and acting with integrity, meaning that they're taking the actions that support the words that are being spoken about, the things that need to change. And as you said, as we move down and get to the field level, probably a sweet spot is that highly experienced journey person who may not even be in a supervisory role, who is absolutely dragging the crew down from an attitude standpoint, or a supervisor, a person who's a foreman, a superintendent, who again has got his feet firmly planted in the past and will not move them. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate part is that as that continues, and it's still, as you said, it's a problem, as that continues, we make it very, very difficult for the story that are trying to tell and being able to demonstrate results with change, new programs, success and progress, increasing numbers in different demographics, however you want to measure. And measurement obviously is always part of it, that we're seeing good progress, but again, they're just holding on with both hands to the past.
Yeah. Well, and that's partly human nature for sure. And I think that, I don't want to understate it or overstate it about these challenges. I think it's important for us to recognize we still have a challenge. And in the same breath, recognizing that we are improving. That more and more women are joining our unions every day. More and more, Black, Indigenous people of color, visible minorities are joining our trades every day, and lots of good people in our industry are finding homes for these people to be in our trades and supporting these folks in our trades, and that's what we need. That's what we need to do. And Trade Women Build Nations is a fantastic example of that. I went to that my first time last year, and these tradeswomen in our unions, boy, do they rock. They have a good time, and they are tough, dedicated, fun-loving tradespeople from all walks of life, from and all different kinds of cultural aspects. And if you want to really see the work that we're doing as an industry to be a more inclusive industry, just have a look at the video of Trade Women Build Nations on the NAB2 website. I mean, that's a truly inspiring event, and that is the preferred future that we're all working towards. We've got more work to do, but we are heading in the right direction, and I think that says a lot about our industry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. It probably won't surprise you that to hear that I spent just last week, I spent 3 days delivering a workshop to the district council staff of one of the IUPAT's district councils. And the workshop was on emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So they could learn some things about what their level of emotional intelligence is, how to use it, and why it's so important to understand it. I've been invited to do a similar workshop, the same subject matter, including a fancy assessment, online assessment for a program in Chicago called Chicago Women in the Trades.
Yeah.
It's a pre-apprenticeship. It's a feeder program. And I will have a class of pre-apprentice women. And we're going to spend a day in a workshop talking about behavioral style and emotional intelligence as part of their pre-apprentice curriculum.
Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
I'm looking forward to that. And it's the kind of things we need to be doing. I'm not just saying that because it's the kind of things that I do. By the way, I'm not a chief used car salesman here, Sean. I'm sure that you're going to give me the benefit of the doubt on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm comfortable saying I just know that the things that I talk about all the time with very specific thoughts and a lot of energy is a part of what needs to be happening more and more for us to ensure that this industry, which will never go away. And I always say when I'm with folks that are young foremen, in some cases even apprentices that are brought into some of the classes I teach, I say, you're in a great industry. I said, the tools we use are changing. And we got artificial intelligence and robotics and this and that. I said, but fundamentally, this industry is never going to go away because we're always going to have to build things and fix things and maintain things and repaint things forever. How we do it is going to change, but that doesn't mean that your opportunities are going to lessen. In fact, they may increase or expand, and you'll just learn new things in order to be successful.
Yeah, and now there's no better time to join the trades than now. Maybe some could argue in the 50s that the last kind of big boom in infrastructure post-World War II and the world was a lot of construction projects. But now, in the States, you have the Inflation Reduction Act, you have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, you have the CHIPS bill, you have all those fantastic tools that have been passed to reshore the American economy and to build up the Canadian economy. And we have similar examples here in Canada. And it's going to be a challenge as we transition from oil and gas and decarbonize. But these new energy sources of the future, nuclear, hydrogen, small modular reactors, traditional nuclear, and renewables, and wind and solar and offshore wind, and there's so much opportunity and so much diversity. And then you look at our existing buildings and the retrofits that need to happen in the existing buildings, and you look at car production and mining and electric vehicles, electric batteries. I mean, for a young person getting into trades right now, wow, what a lot of opportunity there is. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity for industry right now. And I think we need to continue to, capitalize on those opportunities, but continue to recognize that in order for us to capitalize on those opportunities, we need to do a really good job at our soft skills. We need to do a really good job at managing people. It's a people business. Yeah.
No, well said. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. I mean, because I don't think either one of us has a lack of an ability to verbalize.
Yeah. Just the Irish in me, Dennis. You might have an Irish name to yourself.
As it is in me, my friend. I appreciate that. Well, notice, but I have more of the complexion. This is my natural complexion. Like I'm always embarrassed. In constant state of embarrassment. I'm so grateful for this time I've had with you. It's too short. And I feel like I didn't hear enough of you. But I think that anybody that listens is going to understand that this labor leader is looking squarely at the future, understands what the future is, which is a great one, and also understands what's necessary to get there. And it's not kicking people in the ass.
Right.
Yeah. So I thank you so much for your time. I'm probably going to reach out to you in 6 or 9 months and say, Sean, it's time to get back to the podcast. We got some new stuff to talk about. And I hope you would accept another invitation to visit with me.
I'd be happy to come back anytime, Dennis. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for all that you do for the construction industry. This is important work that you're doing. And on behalf of Canada's Building Trades Unions, thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care, Sean.
You too.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Duran. Dennis is the author of Soft as Steel and a leading speaker and trainer for organizations across many industries and verticals. To learn more about the work Dennis is doing to activate soft skills in the workplace, contact him at DennisDuranSpeaking.com. Be sure to check out his book, Soft as Steel, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts. And please remember to share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you feel would benefit from the conversation. We'll see you next time on the Soft as Steel podcast with Dennis Duran.